All right, everybody, welcome back to the #1 television program in the history of the entire universe. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown, all three books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm going to be doing my top 10 forgotten fantasy series of all time. I mean, just like there's been a lot of forgotten hair metal bands that we've sort of forgotten over the course of time, there's been a lot of fantasy books that I read in the 80s and 90s, and even some that were published in the 70s, that have just kind of been forgotten over time, that I still think are worth mentioning and worth giving a shout out to. So the rules for this top 10 list are fantasy books that were written quite a while ago, that I read when I was a kid or a teenager or maybe in college, stuff that was super important to me way back then, stuff that was probably bestsellers way back when, that people just don't read or talk about anymore. Some of them are just plumb out of print. And the other rule is they have to be books that are still in my collection, that I still once in a while pick up and read for nostalgia reasons. So let's get to the top 10 forgotten fantasy series of all time, at least according to me. And, but, we're going to have a handful of honorable mentions. So let's get to the honorable mentions first. Now, I don't think this author has necessarily been forgotten to the sands of time, but this series, More Dance Need, which comprises two books, The Mirror of Her Dreams and The Man Rides Through, these, I think, everybody still reads the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant by Stephen Donaldson, but this series is kind of forgotten, and I actually kind of think it was better than a Chronicles of Thomas Covenant. So that's going to go in our stack of honorable mentions. Another honorable mention is a series that came out in kind of the late 90s, and it's still continuing today, but I do think people kind of forget about it, and that is Kristen Britton's Green Rider series. And this one, maybe this one doesn't quite belong on the list, but I do think that it doesn't get talked about much. And it was a series that started in the late 90s. Let's go back old school. This might even be from the 60s, but these are books that I loved when I was a teenager. And that's Fritz Lieber's Fafard and the Grey Mouser series of like 6 or 7 books, starting with Swords and Deviltry. Is that what it is? Swords and Deviltry. These were good books, good Conan-esque sword and sorcery type novels. That's an honorable mention. I think there's 3 more honorable mentions I've got here. This is a book series that I really loved as a kid too, and that is the Lords of Dus series by Lawrence Watt Evans. It's a 4-book series about Garth the Overman, who rides his big, huge cat-like creature, and it's also kind of like a very Conan-esque type of series. Forgotten. There's 4 books in that series, and then this is a very little This one I remember when it came out. There was a big promotion for it in the B. Dalton Walden books and everything, and then it just never really kind of caught on. But it's a trilogy by Deborah Turner Harris, beginning with The Burning Stone. This was actually like a really, really dope fantasy series. Not quite young adult, but it was just great. The series was called, I don't know what the series was called. But anyway, the first book was The Burning Stone. I really, really, really liked this series back when I was a teenager. And then the last book on my, what was it? What were we doing here? The honorable mentions, is the Fae series by Kristen Catherine Rush. This is about 5, 6, 7, or 8 books long. Came out in the 90s. Some of the best fantasy writing you'll ever read. The Fae series was fantastic. The first book of The Fae Sacrifice. I will be showing you, in most cases, the very first book in the series in case you're interested in any of these. Okay, let's get to the top 10. The top 10. We've done the honorable mentions. Now we get to the top 10. And the top 10 is super cool. Super forgotten books. Well, some of them are. I mean, okay, so, oh shit, I just dropped one. Okay, so starting with the top 10, starting at number 20. I know, I couldn't keep it to just 10. I couldn't even keep it to 20. But anyway, we've got 6 honorable mentions. And then number 20 is Margaret Weis, Tracy Hickman. I mean, Dragonlance was the big thing, but this Deathgate cycle was kind of their next big magnum opus series other than Dragonlance, and it had like 7 books in it, I believe. It was a great fantasy series. It's still somewhat talked about today, but not as much as Dragonlance and things like that. So the Deathgate cycle by Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman comes in at number 20. We will put that right there. Coming in at number 19 is Jennifer Robison's Sword Dancer series about Tiger and Dell, another very Conan the Barbarian-esque type series featuring our swordswoman Dell and our swordman Tiger. But the first book in the series, and there's about 8 books in the series, is Sword Dancer. Fantastic series. And we might see another Jennifer Robertson series on the list. Oh, this was one of my favorites as a kid. I loved these books when I was younger. And that is Joel Rosenberg's Guardians of the Flame series. Comes in at number 18. The first book in the series is right here with the great Daryl K. Sweet cover. It is The Sleeping Dragon. It's about a bunch of people playing Dungeons and Dragons, and they get swept off into the Dungeons and Dragons world in which they are playing. Pretty typical, pretty cliche, but absolutely fantastic series. I think I've got like 9 books in the series or something like this, but I loved it. Loved this series. That's number 18. Number 17. And this was a hugely popular series in the 1990s. One of the more popular series in the 90s. It just kind of fell off the radar for everybody. And that is The Wayfarer Redemption by Sarah Douglas, the Australian author Sarah Douglas. And I think I've got 6 books that are in this series. I think that's what they are. But I think the series is called The Wayfarer Redemption. Great cover by Louis Royaux, who did many book covers in the 1980s and 1990s. Just a great series. Forgotten. Another forgotten series, which has got about 20 books in it. And that is Michelle West. And this is the first book in the series, Hunter's Oath. But it's got, I don't know, what was the name? It's the Sun Sword series. I can't remember what it is. I've got them all right down there. They are all literally right down there, and I've forgotten the name of the series. It's Michelle West. The first book in the series is The Hunter's Oath, and I swear to God, there's 20 books in this series. Another forgotten series that started in the 90s and continued through the 2010s and stuff, but I don't think many people talk about it. It was great. Oh, and then of course we've got Elizabeth Moon coming in at number 15 with The Sheep Farmer's Daughter, The Deeds of Paxenarian. Now this series, this is the first book in the series, but there's like about 2 other spin-off series that belong with this series, if that makes sense. So I'm going to put this in my forgotten, because this came out in the 80s. I'm pretty sure this came out in the 80s, this book here. Long forgotten, though. Some people know about it. Another one that some people still kind of know about that comes in at number 14 is The Jackal of Nar. This one came out in the late 90s. I remember when it came out, I bought it the day it came out. It was just a fantastic series. And he's also got another series too, another trilogy. But the Jackal of Nar trilogy, this is the Tyrants and Kings, book 1 by John Marco. Excellent series. Kind of grim, darky, R-rated stuff. Number 12, coming in at number 12 is book 1 of The Winds of the Forelands by David B. Coe. This is a 5-book series. And I really like this series. A very Game of Thrones-esque series with maybe not quite the R-rated content that Game of Thrones had, but I really loved this series. There was 5 books in the original series, and there might have been a follow-up trilogy, but I don't have that one. But this is a kind of a long forgotten series. I don't know. This one might have come out in the 2000s, actually. This one, I might have broke my rule. Oh, but he did sign the book for me when I met him. But yeah, this might have come out in the 2000s. Yeah, 2002. All right, I broke my rules with this one. But what you gonna do? We'll edit that part out. The Baker's Boy by J.V. Jones. In fact, I'm going to put at number 12, and because this one came out in the 90s, but then this one came out in the 2000s. So the Baker's Boy trilogy, it's the Book of the Words trilogy, starting with the Baker's Boy. And then J.V. Jones also did this trilogy, the Sword of Shadows. Well, actually, it's not a trilogy. I think it's 5 books. Sword of Shadows, starting with A Cavern of Black Ice. So coming in at number 11 and 12 is going to be J.V. Jones in our forgotten fantasy series. Coming in at number 10. So now we're to the actual top 10 that I promised you. And I don't know if this guy's necessarily been forgotten. He's still probably pretty wildly popular. But I did throw David Gemmell in this, his legend, his Draenei Saga, book of 10 or 11, series of 10 or 11 books. Comes in at number 10, David Gemmell legend. And David Gemmell is a legend in the fantasy field. Probably doesn't even belong on this list because I don't know if he's really been forgotten. But anyway, I thought I'd throw him in there just because, he's an older, he did stuff in the 80s and 90s. Black Sun Rising, C.S. Friedman, comes in at number 9 with her trilogy. Can't remember what the name of this trilogy was, but anyway, the first book, it's the Cold Fire. The Cold Fire trilogy. Book number 1, Black Sun Rising. Great painting by Michael Whelan. One of the Daw books. Let's see, there's a lot of Daw books on here. Let's see, the Green Rider was a Daw book. This is a Daw book. I think there's about 4 more coming up. Daw books did a lot of great forgotten fantasy series. Another Jennifer Robertson. We had one Jennifer Robertson before. Now I think that we had the Sword Dancer. Now Jennifer Robertson also comes in at number 8 with her Chasuli series of 6 books. The first book, Shape Changers, was the first book in the series. Also a Daw book. So she finishes in the top 10. She was in the top 20 and she's in the top 10. She had 2 series that were just magnificent. And another Daw book is coming up. And these are, I consider these forgotten. And they shouldn't be. These are just some of the most dope books you're ever going to read. And that is Melanie Ron's Dragon Prince. There's 6 books in this series. Just fantastic. It is the book 1 Dragon Prince series. Oh, I've also met her. She signed it. I should have showed you. A lot of these books, I've met the authors and they've signed them. But anyway. So the Dragon Prince trilogy, or 6-book series by Melanie Ron. Some of the greatest world building and plot and characters that you'll ever get in a fantasy. Long forgotten. Oh, and then, of course, Dennis L. McKiernan's. Everything Dennis L. McKiernan wrote was classic fantasy, high epic fantasy like Lord of the Rings. He comes in at number 6. This is The Dark Tide, book 1 of his Iron Tower trilogy. And he's written all sorts of books and trilogies and duologies in this world. And I think he's kind of been forgotten through the sands of time or whatever. I got to stop saying that cliche. But I'll edit it out so no one will know I ever said it. Mickey Zucker-Reichert's The Last of the Renshai series of 9 books. Long forgotten. Another Daw book series, long forgotten books. Gosh, these were so good. Some of the best fantasy books ever written are now going to be in my top 5. But I consider them kind of forgotten because people don't read them anymore. They're out of print. They're no longer with us. But another Daw book. Daw Books published some of my favorite fantasy series back in the 80s and 90s, including my number 4 pick, The King's Dragon. This is volume 1 of The Crown of Stars by Kate Elliott. I talk a lot about this series on my channel. I'm not really sure if Kate Elliott's really that forgotten either. I mean, she's still publishing a lot of books even to this day. But this series came out in the 90s, and maybe the early 2000s, but I think it's kind of a forgotten series. It's an epic that deserves all the accolades that Wheel of Time and Game of Thrones gets. It's just that good. And a little bit forgotten. So this is one of my favorite series of all time. Coming in at number 3 in my forgotten series fantasy is Stephen Brust. These books started when I was a kid. The series is still going. He's still writing it. He's still working on his Vladimir Taltos series. I think he's up to 23 books or something right now. But the first one came out in the early 80s. Let me see. This is the first one. Came out in 1983. I was correct. The early 80s, and it's still going. But I don't think it gets a lot of credit, and it's not talked about a lot, but it's just a fantastic series of very cleverly written and very funny adventure novels about Vlad Taltos, the thief, spy, adventurer, sometimes assassin, running around with his, crew of bad guys, good guys, and magicians and wizards and sorcerers and all sorts of things. It's just awesome. My number 2 forgotten fantasy series of all time, again, is one of my favorites of all time. And that is, I think there's 12 books in this series, plus a handful of spin-offs. But that is the Thieves' World series by Robert Asprin. I can't gush on and on enough about this. If you want to see, I've done several videos about the Thieves' World and how much I love it. So all you need to do is type in my name, Durfee, and then Thieves' World. If you want to watch a bunch of reviews where I gush on and on about this series. And look at doesn't that just look like a motley crew of badass characters getting ready to... and this came out in the late 70s. That is a late 1970s cover by Walter Velez. I believe that was the name of the artist. Let me make sure I got that correct. It doesn't say in here, but anyway, I'm pretty sure it was Walter Velez. What is my number 1 forgotten fantasy series of all time? Well, it is probably one of the most well-written fantasy series, and I just love the way this woman writes. And it is the Dirini series by Catherine Kurtz. And there's 9 books. Well, there might be 12 books in the series. There's 9 books that I have. I own 9 of the books. I think there's 12 books in the series, though. But this is book number 1, Dirini Rising. This is just a random book in the series that I pulled off the shelf. But it is Catherine Kurtz, Dirini series. Dirini Rising, The Bishop's Heir, and a whole bunch of other books in between. My number 1 forgotten fantasy series of all time. These books need to be resurrected and put back into circulation because they've been long forgotten. Oh, and another thing is I have met Catherine Kurtz also, and she has signed my books. I think I've got one of the signed. Yeah, she signed them too. So anyway, that, my friends, is my top 10 list of forgotten fantasy series. Hope that I introduced you to some stuff that maybe you didn't know about, or maybe things you did know about but had forgotten about. And you take a look at picking them up wherever you can get them at this point. Because, most of them, they don't even print them anymore.